Hey everyone, welcome to the Finding Missing Angles worksheet where I'm going to take a look at a few examples and then also kind of hop to some problems that are definitely more clearly related to the notes because not all of these have to do with parallel lines. So if I just kind of start taking a look at these diagrams for finding missing angles, I can see, for question one, we're trying to figure out the measure of angles A, B, and C. Okay. Um, so it was kind of assumed that we knew some of this, at least kind of going in, but let's just kind of see what we can come across. So A, B, and C are all on the right-hand side of this diagram over here. And in theory, I don't know anything about basically those angle measures right off the bat. What I do know is that on this other side, I can say that this is going to be 112 degrees. These two angles, okay, are considered vertical angles, and maybe I'll just kind of add that in as kind of a note here. So these are vertical angles, which are going to be congruent, okay? And I also know based off this diagram that these are also congruent, and that's based off of that little arc with a hash mark in it. So that's telling me that this is also going to be equal to 112 degrees. And once we know that, it becomes a little bit easier to find all those missing pieces. Namely, B is 112 degrees because we said it was a vertical angle. And then A and C need to be the supplementary angles to 112. So that should end up being, both of these are 68 degrees. Another kind of formal definition that we might not know is A and B here. So those are considered a linear pair. So it's a pair of angles that form a straight line. So that's kind of where we get linear. And then pair just meaning that generally we use it with basically two angles. Um, so two angles that form a straight line have to add up to 180 degrees or have to be supplementary. My diagram for question two, I can take a look at it. And really what I should be able to identify is that uh, these three angles put together have to equal 180 degrees. So I can take away, so it looks like that would be 53 degrees. So I'm going to say 127 degrees for A. And that's kind of being done in my head, so if I'm wrong, go ahead and just make that correction, but I believe that that should check out 53. Yeah, it looks good. All right. Number three, I might kind of leave out there for you to take a look at and try to figure out. It's an extension of what we already know, but you can probably identify where that 40 degrees is going to be helping you out. But this one, you're kind of going to get one angle at a time and be able to kind of go from there. So that one's a pretty interesting one that I don't want to ruin too much. I might come down to five, which might have a little bit of kind of additional learning. And then I'll also do like a question 7 for you. So for five, I've got this triangle or these three lines intersecting here. And some of these angles I can get pretty quick. So if this is 132 degrees, then I know that E is going to be 132 degrees right off the bat. D is going to be a linear pair with either of those angles, which means it needs to add up to 180 degrees. So this is going to be 48 degrees for D. I could get C in one of two ways. I know that C plus D plus this 90 degrees has to equal 180, or I just know that C and D have to equal 90 degrees because that's 180 minus that right angle. So this would need to be 32 degrees. Actually, I kind of want it to be 42 degrees. Yeah, sorry, 42 degrees for C. And I kind of was double checking myself there because here I also know that those are a linear pair, so that needs to add up to 180 degrees. And A and B should be easy to get. They both need to be 90 degrees because they are either a vertical angle to that right angle in the case of B, or it's a linear pair to that right angle in the case of A, right? So these are generally called angle chases, where you start off knowing a subset of information, and then you kind of trickle through your diagram until you can figure out all the missing angles. All right, so 7 is going to more closely relate to the specific learning that I felt we had to do with parallel lines and transversals. So for 7, we'll get to even kind of use some of that vocab that we have here. So um, a few different ways to do it. People will probably tackle this definitely differently. But I might just go with the fact that I know A is 54 degrees, and that's because it's a vertical angle to the angle that I have given. I could also note that A and C are corresponding angles, and corresponding angles are congruent. So I could say that this is 54 degrees, and then B is also corresponding to the initial 54, but it's also a vertical angle to C. So in fact, all of these end up being 54 degrees in that particular case. All right. For this diagram on the right-hand side, I would assume that this 54 degrees is referencing this angle right here. And I might just see if that's, again, kind of enough information for you to struggle with and to think on. And otherwise, I think the learning that's going to be taking place at this point is probably valuable to encounter on your own. And I think 9 and 10 would be pretty good examples of challenges. 11 and 12, I think everybody should be able to kind of take a look at and challenge themselves with. Here essentially I know that these are alternate interior angles. So 3x minus 160 and x are really the same measurement. So I should be able to write a statement that says 3x minus 160 equals x, and then solve that equation. So that's an example of how that's done. And finally, being able to answer some of these questions, filling it in with kind of a piece of vocabulary. So if angle P is a right angle, and P and Q form a linear pair, so I'm essentially appears as though I would figure out this, then the measure of angle Q, so then we know that this has to be 90 degrees. I'm giving it a numeric value versus just saying it's a right angle because it's asking for the measurement. But yeah, just trying to decode some of those statements in order to get results. Hopefully that gives you a head start on that worksheet. As always, feel